Welcome back to The Division 2. In this video we are going through my top 10 balancing changes I think would make the game great again. This was suggested on Discord, and if you guys want to suggest videos for me to do, topics to talk about, you can use the comments, Discord, Twitter, community posts. There's a lot of ways of contacting me. But in this one we are going to be talking about balancing changes. And starting off with number 1, they are in no specific order, it's just how quick they came to my head. Number 1 is to lower the enemy NPC's damage output. Ever since Warlords of New York was released, the enemies hit far too hard. People were saying that enemies are bullet sponges. You can kind of decrease that, and there has been some balancing changes, but all along I've not really had a problem with the enemies taking too much damage. It's more the fact that they deal far too much damage. You can have 1.8, maybe 2 million armor, and you're shredded in 2 bullets. If they was to decrease the enemy NPC's damage output, I believe that would make, that alone would make tank builds a lot more viable. Moving on to number 2, increase our base damage by 50%. I was going to say 100% and just double our base damage, but as I said, it's not so much that enemies are bullet sponges, so I believe it would eliminate that problem for a lot of players if they just increased our base damage by 50%. So instead of having, let's just say you get a Savage Wolverine up to 100k base damage, just whack it up to 150,000. I believe by giving us a little bit more damage, it would make the game fun again. The most fun time there's ever been in this game was when we were damage glitching, dealing 30 million damage per shot. You could go do any content you wanted to in the game, any mission. You could do the raid, you could do legendary, and it would be a blast. It was so much fun doing that. So just 50% extra, I don't think it would be too much to ask for. Obviously, the developers are probably never going to see this video. They're never going to do anything like this because they don't want us to feel strong in this game for some messed up reason. Moving on to number 3, remove purple gear and weapons and stuff completely from the game for level 30 and 40 players. If you do not own the Warlords of New York expansion, then level 30. If you do own it, then level 40. Purple gear should not exist at that level. I know they said that from the gear crates and the weapon crates you're going to get purples because there's no sort of challenged tier behind it sort of thing. But if you're running legendary, it can be tough getting to some of those crates. I know some of them are super easy to get to, but some of them running legendary are really fucking hard to actually get to. You get to it and you're getting let's just say 5% rolls on a purple piece of gear. That is the most disheartening thing. You feel like shit. You're running through legendary, you get through, I don't know, say you clear out 3 rooms, you're on room number 4, and there's a gear crate, you're like, oh my god, I might actually get something decent, and it comes out purple with the worst rolls in the world. You're like, was there any point opening that? I literally could have just run through it on story or normal difficulty and got the same thing, if not even better. So I believe it would not necessarily make the game a lot more fun, but at least make it a little bit better if they did remove purple gear from the highest level players. Because no one ever runs that stuff in their builds anyway. There's the high end. There's a whole tier above. There's no point in purple at all. Number 4 is to increase the minimum values on gear across all difficulties to create stepping stones for easier difficulty advancing. When Warlords of New York first released, it was incredibly tough moving up the difficulties. There were a lot of balancing problems. I mean, there still is now, but there were loads and loads as soon as that come out. The minimum values on gear is absolutely shocking. You run legendary and you can get terrible rolls. You run normal and you have no chance of putting a good build together. I believe they should do something to create better stepping stones for players to advance difficulties. Because if you're wanting to have something that's special, I'm using the raid as an example, that's a separate piece of content to your standard missions, and there's only ever going to be a small amount of the player base to actually complete that stuff. But in terms of story, normal, hard, challenging, heroic and legendary, every single player should have the ability to clear it. Even if your personal skill level isn't that high, you should still have the ability to clear those missions, and it definitely should not be taking as long, if not longer, than the raid completion time to do a legendary mission. The last time I run one and did it legit, no damage glitch or anything, took just over an hour and a half. I think it was an hour and 38 minutes or something. But that is ridiculous, because with a good team, which I had, so if I just doubled the players I had and went into the raid, we would clear the raid in like 35 minutes. Like no longer than an hour, like that's pushing it in the raid. So the fact that Legendary is taking longer than a raid and your minimum values aren't that good, I believe they should be upped, and that's across all difficulties, not just Legendary. Number 5 is to make exotics best in class. They've recently told us that exotics aren't supposed to be the best thing in the game. They are literally just supposed to switch up your playstyle. That is the most bollocks thing I've ever heard in a game in my life. Exotics have always been the best things you can get your hands on. They're exotic, they're rare. But another suggestion to balance it and make it so that exotics are good, not even necessarily best in class, is to make them completely unique. Like the Pestilence, that used to have like a gas cloud it would drop when you were shooting enemies, and that was unique. It made the exotic actually worth going for because it did something different to what guns do in the game. There needs to be something that makes exotics stand out, because they're not the best in class, they're not unique at all. The only thing really different is, I mean, you can't recalibrate them, that's one thing. You can now do the reconfigure thing, which will give you different stats, but you still can't actually recalibrate. And that's only been the case since Warlords released. Before Warlords, they would all drop with exactly the same stats. There wouldn't be a single difference from one player to the next. Moving on to number 6, make Overcharge a permanent talent instead of the 15-second proc. When you are running a skill build, you have the different skill tiers, and even at skill tier 6, they just don't feel as good as they probably should. There are some skill builds that are working out, but wouldn't it be better if they were a lot more fun to use? They were stronger. Overcharge is a talent that, I say a talent, it's a feature, it's a function of the skill builds that rarely ever gets used because you only get a 15-second proc. And that's using either the Acosta's Go Bag and throwing a grenade, or you're using the Energized Talent, if that's what it's called. I've not actually done much on this game in a long time now, in terms of actually playing it and knowing what everything's about. But Overcharge, in my opinion, should be a permanent thing you can use, because I believe it does give the skills a bit of a boost. I mean, it could all be completely reworked and made a lot better, but again, the devs are probably never going to do anything that's mentioned in this video. It's literally just community discussion, and do you think these things would make the game good again, or make the game better than it currently is for some of you that are still really enjoying it? But moving on to number 7, I wish they would separate PvE and PvP completely so that the PvE stuff doesn't get nerfed all the time. They really don't want players being strong, but I don't think we should have any PvE nerfs in the game at all. Like, they need to realise that it's player versus environment. It's just, you're shooting the computer. That is pretty much what you're doing. You've got a gun in your hand, you're pressing buttons, and you're shooting computer players. We should realistically be able to do that in any way, shape or form. If we want to go into a mission with 500 million damage, we should be able to do that sort of stuff. Obviously, that's a huge exaggeration, but I'm hoping you get the point. We should be powerful. Things shouldn't be nerfed all the time because, yeah, fair enough, the Baker's Dozen was really, really overpowered, but they should not have nerfed that weapon. If anything, they should have brought every other gun up to that gun's level, because the Baker's Dozen was making heroic stuff completable. You were able to complete heroic missions easily. And there was a lot of players using the Baker's Dozen and the Fox's Prayers and the Contractor's Gloves. But now they've nerfed it all, everyone's got to grind again for new builds. If they would have brought everything else up, players would have tried other builds because the other guns were just as good. And the Baker's Dozen would still be a build like, I don't get it. The developers are always seeming to want us to have to grind again. And that's their kind of way of keeping us entertained, is just go, oh, here you go, we've reset, now get on the game and fucking work your ass off again. Now that is not a way to keep a player base active and enjoying the thing you've created. Number 8, and this is quite a big topic on its own, add build diversity. More build diversity. We need more builds in this game. I would love to see, just for an example, a shotgun build that is tanky as shit, and it allows the player running it to literally, you go and kill an enemy with your shotgun build, you're going to heal the rest of your team. Stupid things like that, and just other cool builds similar. But But there's literally, you're going to run the baker's dozen, or you was going to run the baker's dozen. You're going to have your same generic skill build or your same generic survivability build, and that's pretty much it. Within those categories of survivability, skill, and DPS, there's nothing else to be seen. And then moving on to number 9, I want to see something like, this isn't exactly balancing the game. I mean, a couple of these probably aren't, but I want to see random events that completely unbalance some of the weapons. As an example, we could have a week where the honey badger deals 250% bonus damage or something like that. Maybe even do it so that there's one weapon each day for a 1 week event that will be crazy strong with either bonus damage, bonus crit damage, just different things like that. And then let us know beforehand so that we can loot those weapons and get ourselves ready for it. Because I believe that would actually get a lot of players involved and a lot of people would be interested in that sort of stuff. And I've only put that on this list because that's not actually balancing, that's like a brand new event in the game. But it's to do with unbalancing the weapons. So I thought I'd add it to the list. And then moving on to the final one, I wish they would balance the skills. Sort out the skills so that everyone isn't just running the same skills all the time. I don't want to have to rely on the fixer drone because the chem launcher got nerfed into the ground through the Gear 2.0 update. But it's just for some reason, I know it's tougher at the moment because of what's going on, but for some reason these developers, even when they're in full working force, they just don't seem to do much to the game. Like every week you have a maintenance and it's just bug fixes. And then you have a title update that's just nerfing some things, balancing things that are irrelevant, and then just more fucking bug fixes. I wish these developers would actually pay attention to what the community talk about, because it's not just me that raises these concerns. There are thousands of people that talk about this stuff on a daily basis across all forms of social media, and the developers just never listen. It's kind of getting annoying repeating ourselves and hoping and praying that we're actually acknowledged one day. But yeah, those are my top 10 kind of like balancing changes that I believe would make the game great again. And that's going to do it for the video. Let me know your thoughts and stuff in the comments. What changes that I haven't mentioned would you like to see in the game, if they were to ever do anything? And that is going to do it for now, so I will see you soon with more Division 2 content. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for watching.